Hi everyone and welcome to the Hagir show from the Hagir Network. Today I am here with Mike O'Brien, who is running for the 10th Congressional District. We will get to meet him, learn a little bit about him, and tell you how you can help and support his campaign. Hello Mike and welcome.
Thanks for having me. I'm
You're
excited.
welcome, you're welcome. So start by telling us who you are.
Yeah. So I'll say a little bit about where I'm from and what I've done so far in my life. First of all, I'm 42 years old, so that's my life. But I grew up right outside of Philadelphia in Montgomery County, and went to a school called Cheltenham. There, it's like right outside of Philadelphia. And my wife, she was born in York County in Hanover, and then grew up in New Oxford School District, which is Adams County, so about like 30 minutes or so away from here. And so we met each other actually at the Naval Academy, where we went after high school. And she was a basketball player. I liked her three-point shot, but she's actually the all-time leading scorer there in basketball still to this day. So she's the one who teaches the kids how to shoot. I'm not allowed. I'm not allowed to touch a basketball around them right now. But we went from there and into, well, we actually went to grad school in between there and the Marine Corps. I went to MIT for a couple of years. I studied engineering there, and she did poli sci actually.
Oh,
So, but
wow.
she doesn't want anything to do with politics. But then we went to the Marine Corps where we got married just after our basic training essentially. So we've been married now for 18 years, and so we kind of went on parallel paths where for me, I was a fighter pilot, so flew jets, and if you've seen Top Gun Maverick
Oh,
especially, I
wow.
flew that plane. It's called the F-18, and then I transitioned mid part of my career to fly in F-35s, which is stealth fighters. So it was brand new at that point. And then meanwhile, my wife, she was flying C-130s, which are refueling planes. So she's actually refueled me in the air a few times.
Oh, wow.
So in both of the planes that I flew, which is very unique. It's never been done in the
Mhm.
Marine Corps. But we finished off as commanding officers of units. So it's kind of like being a CEO of 200 Marines and $1.5 billion worth of aircraft. And we were the first married couple in the history of the Marine Corps to both command squadrons. So it was, I would say, that was the bulk of the last 20 years of my life was really focused on the Marine Corps and the military. And I talk about that a lot, but I also like to say that that was a lot more about like people and relationships
Mhm.
than you would imagine, especially building relationships on the international level
Yeah.
with countries for me, such as South Korea and Japan. I actually lived in Japan for 2.5 years. So did that, and I also worked very closely with Australia and the Philippines and many other countries when I was in a role at the Pentagon. I worked at the Pentagon for a few years too. So it was a great experience to where you get to work with other countries, other cultures in a diverse environment, and
Mhm.
really the most diverse environment I think that exists in American society today, which is great. And I'd say my biggest accomplishment that I'm most proud of from the military is, and I had mentioned this before during the previous forum, is during the fall of Kabul, when the Taliban was taking over
Mhm.
Afghanistan. We actually helped a family of 8 escape, and they literally got through the gates there about like 24 hours before the deadly bombing there, and we got them out, and they're thriving right now in America. And in fact, some of their cousins, we've also been able to help out over the past, really, it was a month ago now when they arrived in America. They were in Afghanistan and had to escape and go to Pakistan because their daughter, who's 5 years old, her name is Yusra, she
Mm.
was dying of leukemia. And so she needed treatment. So she went to Pakistan, but then we worked through the whole visa and immigration process, and I helped to expedite that based on the contacts that I have. And she's now receiving treatment in a children's hospital in Phoenix instead, which is obviously a step up.
Mhm.
So that's to me what really the military and my life has been about so far in terms of service and really people and relationships and building those relationships. So that's uh, that's where I'm from and who I am, I think, in a nutshell.
You are a cool man.
Thank you.
So how how did you leave this like really cool job and
Yeah,
it's a calling, not just a job,
right.
and decided to do politics?
Yeah,
Where
so
did that come from?
good question. I get this a lot. It's like, you're flying fighters, like why would you do that and subject
Exactly.
yourself to the
Not
scrutiny?
like the
That,
politics is not cool,
yeah,
but not the
yeah,
same level.
it's different. So my why really started in 2015. My best friend in the Marine Corps, his name is Major Taj Serene. He was Indian American from San Francisco. He was a fighter pilot too. So he flew F-18s, and he was fighting ISIS for 6 months in Iraq and Syria. And on his way back from the deployment after those 6 months, he was flying through the UK and flew into the clouds, and his navigation system, his heads-up display, kind of flipped on him and pointed him towards the ground. And he didn't recognize it, and he lost his life, unfortunately. And
Sorry.
so for me, thank you. For me, I lost a best friend. You know, he was 34, had a 1-year-old daughter, and so was I at the time. And it caused me to kind of reevaluate my purpose in life. And he was the type of person that we need here, who would bring people together, no matter what your race, religion, political persuasion was. It was never about him. It was always about us and bringing us all together. And a couple months later, when his gravestone went in, the last line on it, it reads, "In service for mankind." And so I saw that, and I said to myself, I want to live that same legacy that he did of service and togetherness, and put myself where it was needed most. And that became very clear, meaning where it was needed most. In 2016, when Donald Trump got elected, and with the wave of divisiveness that took over the country, and we just went into two different corners, really, that really sparked that desire to enter the political arena one day, because that's where I feel like I can make a difference. Didn't know when I was going to apply all of the work that I was doing then educationally to learn about politics and policy, but that became pretty clear to me in the lead up to January 6th, because my wife and I mentioned her earlier, we were stationed at the Pentagon in the aftermath of the 2020 election. And so we heard all the rumors about Donald Trump using military force to overturn the results. And that is something that obviously we couldn't stand for. And we saw the lead up to January 6th, and the MAGA hats, the Confederate flags, the American flag pickup trucks. And that morning, I was actually driving myself across the country, because I was on a military move to my next duty station, but my wife and kids were still there in D.C. And my daughter's school was closed down. My wife had to go get my son from childcare, who's across the National Mall. And I was watching it all out of the corner of my eye on my cell phone, and saw like C-SPAN shut off, and go to CNN, and you see the breach of the Capitol, you see the gunshots fired, and that day, 5 police officers were killed and 150 were injured. And after all of it, Scott Perry still tried to take away our votes here in Pennsylvania. And I took that personally for my vote, an absentee ballot here in Pennsylvania, while I'm out serving my country, and he's tried to do that. And so at that point, I knew that as soon as I could retire, I would, because I couldn't let Donald Trump and Scott Perry attempt to overthrow our democracy under the guise of patriotism. So I did retire as soon as I could, September 1st of last year, and launched my campaign a few days later, and ultimately to step up and start a movement to reclaim freedom and patriotism and the American flag itself in the name of democracy.
No, thank you. That's basically the theme, the Donald Trump era, and especially Scott Perry and what is he's been doing in Pennsylvania in general and our region. And that is the fuel for everyone to try to find their calling.
Right.
And you did. I mean, serving your country in the Marine and serving it right now, they're equal. Like to me, they're both honorable jobs, and you are going to do great in either. But so, is there any regret so far?
No, not at all.
Good.
And I would say that this is not easy. Like you talked to a few candidates, I'm sure, but putting yourself out there and subjecting yourself to scrutiny, to where everybody analyzes every word you say and every policy stance that you have is difficult, because nobody's going to agree with you 100% of the time.
Correct.
So you have to face the heat, quite frankly. But as a Marine, like, I was used to doing hard things. This is a hard thing. I'm doing it now, and however this specific election turns out, this is about our future, long term, not just right now. And so I'm here to stay here in Cumberland County specifically, building a house, and my wife and kids they're going to finish school, because she's still active duty, by the way.
Okay.
She's in her 20th year, and the kids are going to finish up school on June 13th, and then they'll come over here, and then our house will hopefully be built by then. But we're going to be a family here, and we're going to continue that life of service, just like you alluded to, of bringing it from the military to the political world, which that's, again, where we need leaders. And so I'm looking forward to this. And yes, it's difficult, but it's about serving others. It's not about me. And my wife and I have this talk all the time. It's like, she's across the country right now with our kids, and I have to see them on FaceTime, and that's the hardest thing for me to do right now is to talk to my kids across the country, especially my daughter, who's now 10 years old and is so grown up, and my son's 7, and so she's like taking care of him because my wife is so busy, and to see that and how proud of her I am, it's like that's the hardest thing. But we're not doing this for ourselves. We're doing it for you, for us, for everybody, and and that's not going to stop no matter what happens with this one election coming up.
Great. That will be my next thing, because you have 2 young kids, and I'm sure many of the listeners and the voters in the area, they have kids in different age group, and what you're doing is going to basically change the course, or if we elect Scott Perry, this is also not just going to affect you and me, it's going to affect the kids, affect our next generation. So first of all, let's see how your kids feel about this. Do you have, I mean, they're still young, but I'm sure you have a conversation with them, because now their life is out there, right?
Yes, it's true to an extent. They're protected a little bit because they're in San Diego right now. But they understand what I'm doing, and I was really happy to have brought them over here during the winter break. They spent a couple weeks here, and they've been here plenty of times because this is where their grandparents live. But they know that they're moving now to some place where that's permanent, that they don't have to move every 2 to 3 years. But they see what I'm doing, and it was really important for me to have them there at one of the forums to hear me speak about why I had to move away for now going on like 6, it'll be 8 months, and really put 100% effort into the political world with the goal to do something about the current state of our nation and their future. And they watched the debate the other night too on ABC 27. They always make fun of me no matter what, no matter what it is.
Of course.
So
of
like,
course.
I can't watch myself back. It's like I make fun of myself too. But I will not watch this show back. But no, they fully understand and appreciate what I'm doing, and they understand to a small extent the stakes. And we've had some interesting discussions. My 7-year-old son, I mentioned him, his name's Jaden. He drew a picture the other day of the U.S. I'll say being successful versus Vladimir Putin and Russia, and we've had like the Ukraine-Russia discussion over the dinner table with our 7-year-old. It's hard for him to understand, but they have these discussions in school. They talk about Ukraine, Russia, Israel, Gaza. Those types of discussions exist, and they're tough discussions. But it's important. It's important for them to understand what goes on outside of their small sphere. And I think the best example for me of that with my kids, I mentioned we lived in Washington D.C. Surrounding January 6th, but really when you go back to that summer with the George Floyd protests and everything that was occurring then, my daughter was 6 at the time. I believe my son was he was 3 or 4. But the day after Donald Trump went out there to the church, held the Bible upside down with Mark Milley, who's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, that was kind of the height of the protests there. And where we lived was only like 3/4 of a mile away from there, and like yes, there were some buildings that were broken into with rocks thrown through the windows and spray paint on all the monuments. And but the next day after that happened, I told my wife we were going for a walk, like my daughter and I, and so we took her. I took her, just her and I, all the way down Black Lives Matter Square, and had that walk and talked about why there was spray paint on everything, and she could read, and she knows what it says. And there were not good words, but it's like why certain people feel a certain way, and what protesting was all about, and what America was all about, and like those moments, the educational moments for my kids, at young ages are hugely invaluable to me as we raise them, because they need to experience what real life is about,
Yeah.
what the real discussions are in America. And so this, for them, me running for office, they do have a little bit of sense of that, which is incredibly important. So obviously I'm doing this for South Central PA, but in the back of my mind, my kids are seeing this of like how to step up and make a difference in the world, and I want to set a good example for them.
That's a good way, because like for them now, they know why you're not here. They might not understand. They might think, oh,
Right.
that is gone.
Yeah.
But they know it's for better and a bigger purpose, and it's
Right.
all gonna end with a better life for both of them
Yeah.
and everyone in the country. So what part of the policy that, like your policy, your campaign, I'm sure it's influenced by what happened in January 6th and what you have seen throughout the years and your experience, but also with what you see raising your kids, growing up, and the world that you want them to be in.
Yeah.
So can you talk to us about your campaign? What
Yeah,
is it
absolutely. And what I do is I talk about freedom a lot,
Yeah.
because like freedom appeals to Americans no matter if you're Democrat or Republican. It's everybody. So like the freedoms that I talk about is a freedom from having to live paycheck to paycheck and have your kids grow up with a better life than your own. The freedom to feel safe in communities and schools from crime and gun violence, which will directly apply to them. The freedom to exercise the right to an abortion and have the government stay out of those decisions, and Scott Perry stay out of those decisions. And then a political freedom, which is here in Pennsylvania, again, not having our votes thrown out based on web of lies. So when I connect that with my children, the one that hits me, I think, hardest is when I talk about the freedom to feel safe in your communities and schools, because our welcome, and I don't tell this story really ever, I haven't yet, but when we were living in Japan for 2.5 years, we came back to America, moved into Washington, D.C. This is 2019. And within the first few weeks of getting there, we went to a pride parade, like right outside our house in the neighborhood. And I'm sure you've been to a pride parade. You're never anywhere that has that much positive energy. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And we brought our kids there. You know, they really enjoyed it. And like we started walking down the street, and then all of a sudden everybody started running and screaming. Again, this is Washington, D.C. in 2019. And they were screaming because they said that somebody had a gun and that they were shooting, that they heard gunshots. And so everybody started to run towards us. And we had our kids, they were 5 and 3 at that time. And we immediately took them and we hid. We hid in a doorway while the rest of the crowd just continued to flow past us. And like that was our like welcome to America, back to America moment. Was the fact that our kids are going to have to grow up in an environment where we drop them off at school in the morning and we don't know if they're going to come home because of the threats of gun violence that are out there today within today's society. And I'm not going to ask how old you are, but when I was growing up, like we didn't have that, and so that's something that's hard for us to wrestle with in terms of the dangers in our society that exist today. So again, when you talk about crime and gun violence, and then this goes without saying, but for my daughter growing up in a world where she and other women have control over their own bodies, that's incredibly impactful to me. So it's, and in my opinion, that abortion should be left up to a woman with her family, with her spiritual advisor if she chooses, and especially with the advice of her physician, and that, again, the government should stay out of that. And so that's something that I directly kind of associate my platform with my kids' future and how that plays in.
And you said the gun violence, also the freedom of speaking,
Yes.
freedom of protesting without fearing someone is going to kill you
Right.
for just being out there celebrating or disagreeing with anything.
Right.
And that's what differentiates us as a country from anywhere else in the world. And I'm sure you know that.
Yeah.
You've been around and you have seen, and especially with the amount of immigrants that most of them flee their countries because of violence.
Right.
And to come here as a refuge, this is a place supposed to be safe for everyone.
Right.
So
Yeah.
the drastic change that happened since 2016, it's not going to just change
Right, overnight.
overnight.
Yeah.
And it's not going to change if no one is standing up. So, you know, those are all important topics and important, you know, policies that you can do. So, how are you planning to use your job? Let's just call it a job, right? And once you get elected, how are you going to make a difference here in central Pennsylvania
Yeah.
and hopefully in the whole United States?
Yeah, so I think, well, as you know, we have a congressman who doesn't do anything for the district right
Exactly.
now, who doesn't make himself available for interviews like these. I can guarantee you that,
Mm-hmm.
or to really any other forum. And so he doesn't take feedback, and also doesn't bring infrastructure dollars back here. Because if you ask me, what do we need the most, or what can I do the most as a congressman, it's about bringing money here for projects that create family-sustaining jobs. That's what I think the priority is in terms of how I can affect South Central Pennsylvania. So it's not only that, we're vastly underfunded in things like mental health and public safety and the public schools as well. So the federal government has the ability to increase that funding through grants and other avenues. And so that's what I think is incredibly important. And this goes without saying, but like I'm a vote on some of these issue topics that we've talked about. So so with again abortion and codifying Roe versus Wade, that's a vote that would happen, in my opinion, in a Democratic Congress day one. So it was the PRO Act is that what that stands for is protecting the right to organize. So that's in support of America's workers and unions. And so those are like day one votes, in my opinion, that I'll be able to weigh into. But overarching, it's bringing infrastructure dollars back here to fix things like the I-83 bridge, like making 81 safer here in Cumberland County, and then redevelopment projects in Harrisburg and York. Because when you look at some of the decay of the housing structures there, it's your underground infrastructure, and it's also obviously above ground, holding landlords accountable too. But it's all it takes is dollars. It's like I did a walk around with the York Redevelopment Authority down there in York, and there are buildings that exist that are ready for ready for a developer
Demolish
to come in.
or
Well, not even some of them, yes, demolish
Develop.
and rebuild, but development and transition projects, and like all it takes is money and an incentive structure to change a little bit, because these developers look at the cost benefit analysis and it's not there for them to make money, and so the federal government can help incentivize and subsidize that a little bit. So when you're talking about the housing crisis, I think we can make a difference there too.
Yeah, yeah. Especially in Harrisburg, you just brought a very good point. The roads, I mean, you still can tell the difference. And this is, for me, this is something that I just can't, and like, I can't really understand.
Right.
The minute that you cross the bridge, you can see the difference.
Yeah.
With the roads, with even the houses, and how many houses are bordered with boxed and not used.
Yeah.
So this is very important.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that is they're landlords too that kind of get away with this, that like operate remotely and aren't actually here. So their level of buy-in and care isn't there. And so I think we need to hold them accountable for increasing prices as well. Like some people, we can't afford it when you're charging first month, last month, and a security deposit to even start renting.
Yeah.
And so like that's a problem that we got to talk about. And then the badly needed upgrades that they don't have, and then the structures are crumbling. So looking at some of the codes there, and then I know in Harrisburg as well, like they don't have like Verizon FiOS, for example, because they can't do anything on underground in terms of underground plumbing and infrastructure. And so that's a huge deal, that if there's ability for federal money to come in and help again with infrastructure, what you'd have to do is to make it more targeted towards a locality, I think, than how we currently do that. And so I do believe that our urban spaces haven't gotten the attention that they deserve, because Scott Perry, even though he's born there, I don't know the last time he stepped foot there and really listened to the residents and try to do something positive to impact their lives.
So you just said something about mental health, and as someone who's passionate, and that's my job, you know, being in healthcare, I know we have issue with the wait list,
Yes.
the staff to patient ratio.
Yeah.
You know, the hospital being, you know, nurses are underpaid, and we can take that also, talk about teachers,
Right.
you know, in the schools. So what will be your message for any nurse or any teacher or anyone that needs not
Yeah.
just healthcare, but
Right.
especially mental health?
Yeah. So I'm going to tell a story, but don't let me off the hook and,
Okay.
and not answer
I'm
that
not.
specifically. Uh,
Okay. Okay. Okay.
cool.
Mm-hmm.
Looking good.
Move this one off your shoulders.
Which one?
On the other side. Other side.
This one?
Yeah.
This one?
Behind. Yep.
Like this? Okay.
There we
All
go.
right.
Cool.
Mhm.
All right. All good. No, I as a commanding officer of a unit, you're like a CEO, like I mentioned before, of 220 Marines, $1.5 billion worth of aircraft, but you're responsible for people's lives, and you're making life and death decisions every day. And you also deal with all of the issues of everyday society. So it's much more than like flying, being a fighter pilot. Like that is not what I did. Like
Yeah.
I was in charge of Marines is what I did. I was a leader, and it's mental health, it's physical health, it's childcare, it's gun violence, domestic violence, you name it. Everything that we deal with in society, that was my responsibility. And preparing to deter war and obviously fight in war if required. But what was at the top of my mind wasn't war fighting.
Yeah.
It was the mental health of my Marines. And the good thing about the military was that we had resources available to us, like at my disposal, to help my Marines right away. And so whether it was like the chaplain or behavioral health services or the hospital, and there were cases where we had to send people multiple times directly to the hospital, or if it was like the chain of command counseling, meaning us doing the counseling, we had those available. And there was one incident where we had a Marine who ran away, so he was MIA for a few days, and we didn't see this coming. And he eventually got found out by the police, but in the real world, you're allowed to run away as long as you
Yeah.
don't commit a crime.
Yeah.
And so the police wouldn't tell us where he was. And we knew that he was in the midst of a mental health crisis, and that if we didn't do something about it, then we don't know how it was going to turn out. So you're typically supposed to wait 30 days when somebody's MIA. And the only way you could get the cops to tell us where he was is if you had a warrant out for his arrest.
Oh, wow.
And so you can't do this within 30 days, but we worked with the legal team on base to sign this paperwork, to push it through, to get an arrest warrant out there to the cops who knew where he was, who didn't tell us, so that they could go find him. And we did it. I think it was 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. that night, and by 9 p.m. the cops went and they went into his room and they found him. And I won't go into details, but he was minutes away. But we rescued him, and then we brought him back to the hospital that I mentioned earlier, and he had care for the next couple weeks really, and then after the fact, we had to go through a disciplinary process, but he told me, and we were one-on-one, that what I did and what we did saved his life, and that was only available because we had those resources available to us in the military. And that's something that I want to bring to the rest of society, and making sure we have the ability to care for people. And so the difference is he had a structure of people who cared.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to be for everybody, is we need to care. And I know you care because you do this for a living. And that's something that we have to be cognizant of, that like everybody needs this support and they need the resources. And so to answer your question, go back and answer your question, how do you get those resources? Because there are staffing shortages, which 100% agree with that. There's staffing shortages in nursing, early childhood education, and elementary education. I did a visit, it was Friday, I believe. I don't even know what day it is today, but probably Friday.
It's Monday.
Yeah, yeah, Friday I think it was. I went to Hack, and this was a great visit, and I will tell you that Hack is on the leading edge of workforce development, and it's not only Hack.
Heck
it's,
yeah.
yeah.
I'm a board of trustee
Oh yeah,
with Hack, so
yeah, no, that's awesome.
I'm proud.
So I know that like a third of their classes are nursing. That they are building up the pipeline for these badly needed professions that are short staffed right now. Again, they do EMT training. You know all that they do there, but mental health services as well. So that's what we need to do, I think, locally and really nationally, is make sure that we have avenues to train the workforce so that you're not waiting for an appointment for a few months, that you can get these types of resources right away, kind of like I had in the military. Like, that's how we do it. We got to build up the workforce. And so community colleges are huge for that, and smaller unit colleges and universities. So I would absolutely put more money towards that. And I see this as another form of service too. It's like there's national service, there's like military, AmeriCorps, Peace Corps, Climate Corps, but I also think there's like mental health services and educators. I put them in that same category, where we need to elevate service and national service especially, and then have community college really be the venue for how you actually train up that workforce. So if you do, a year or two of service, and you should be able to get community college for free or low cost. And that's, I think, what we got to put more money towards, and I call that kind of scholarships for service is what, in my mind, is how we actually do this over the course of the future, is connect service to education and better educational or lower cost educational opportunities, because we do need to be subsidizing service. We already do that with the military. Like I went to the Naval Academy, signed up for 5 years afterwards. I actually did 20. But my education was free because of that service, and I think we need to expand that a little bit.
Thank you. I think this is a very important point, because part of how things are going right now is education is very expensive. It is not readily available for everyone. And to shock you, I grew up in Sudan. Like, my first degree was electrical engineering. And until I graduated from college, and this considered one of the poorest country, right? I did not pay $1. My education was free.
Wow.
So I started to accumulate student loan when I came here and changed my career.
Right.
And I have a huge student loan still, built monthly. And this is, I think, one of the reasons many people don't go to higher education, and they can't afford it, the cost. So this is a good one right here. You talked about like the mental health, where you were in the Navy and what you were able to provide.
Marine Corps.
Marine Corps. Sorry, yeah.
Sorry, I was a stickler about
So yeah, no, but what were you were able to provide for them there? So living here, part of the issues that I covered many years ago is the lack of services that our veterans receive here. And it pains me to see so many are homeless, not able to receive not just mental health, because you were, even if you did not fight a war, you are going to have PTSD. You are going to have issues that need to be addressed, just being away from your family, being in a whole new environment. So that we have a lack, and I believe that they served our country. And it's our part to take care of them. And this is, you hear it a lot, but I still see the lack of services that's provided. How are we going to change that?
So especially when it comes to veterans homelessness, it goes even deeper than mental health, because mental health leads to addiction sometimes. And what I believe, especially with our homeless veterans population, that we need to provide service that lasts like longer than 90 days inpatient. And I've been talking to a lot of people who are much more educated than I am about this. 90 days is a minimum. If you kick somebody back out on the street within 90 days, they're just going to go back to doing something. That's not full addiction and mental health treatment. And again, we had to do this again in the military, in the Marine Corps. Like, I had to send many Marines to addiction treatment, and it's alcoholism as opposed to drugs typically, but it was mental health and addiction go hand in hand. And the best results that we got were when you went to a combined facility that can help with kind of both of those issues that conflate one another. So I think we need facilities and beds to do that. And when I mentioned earlier bringing back mental health funding, I know in Cumberland County, like, we are underfunded by $3 million here. And so I know there was a big tax hike recently, and that kind of goes to
Oh
why.
yeah, let's talk about that.
Yes, yes.
I
So,
just got my bill.
yeah, yeah.
And I looked and I said, what?
Yep. Yeah. So that's why it's because the federal government and state government aren't filling in the gaps when it comes to funding, and we just can't let people go untreated.
Yeah.
And so that's that's where that's coming from. But and so we need to provide for facilities, for beds, for the treatment, for the caretakers, for the professionals, mental health professionals. As mentioned before, it's kind of it's a tough problem to solve because there's a lot of holes right now. So we need to just start whacking away at the the whack-a-mole is what I call it. It's like lots of problems that we need to solve if we're going to solve the whole thing together.
But if we keep fixing issues and not being ready for them, so we are going to be in a defense mechanism our whole
We need
life.
to get ahead of it.
Like we need to get ahead of it and have a system set up so when someone comes back from a service, they already have the resources.
Right.
They have jobs.
Yes.
They have the help they needed first. We can't just discharge people and send them home.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to know what to do.
Right. And I'll say I'm going through. I just, like I said, retired last year, so I'm very much involved with the VA. The VA is great.
Yes.
they when you get treated,
Yes.
they're great. And, like, that's the issue.
Yeah.
Is from the federal level. I know Scott Perry wanted to unfund or defund the VA.
I know.
And I personally feel the brunt of that because it took me 6 months to get a little administrative change where I'm just adding my kids to my account. Like that shouldn't take me 6 months to do that. And then it took me 4 months to get a dental appointment right after I got out. And so let alone any mental health appointments. And so that's all due to the underfunding and understaffing of the VA. Again, they do great work when you can see them. So it's about increasing that staffing and funding. And here locally, we got to go to Lebanon County to go to the Lebanon Clinic. And I know they got something in New Cumberland. So hopefully we can build that up a little bit more around here. But yeah, it's not easy.
It is still
to
an issue.
transition.
It is
Yes.
still an issue.
Yeah.
And the services, like you said. But so if I am just listening to you, I don't know anything about Mike, and I want to know in 5 minutes what you stand for.
Yeah.
Like just cram everything and tell me who are you, why are you running, and how can we help you? Before how we can help you, why should we vote for you?
Yeah, no, thanks. Good question. And I usually answer that with kind of the first story that I told about my friend Taj, because that speaks to my values and who I am and why I'm doing this. And I would say overall, what I saw, again, in the military was a different version of America than is talked about regularly, where we had people from all portions of the country, of the globe, all races, religions, and we all came together to support and defend American values. And there was none of this polarization that you see out there today in the political world. And like, yes, there was some racism here and there that I saw over the course of my career, but it wasn't at the same level. And we were able to address those types of problems head on. And it didn't take literally an act of Congress to change something that needed to be changed. And so we addressed things and we made it better. And I think the same thing needs to be done here in American society as a whole, is we need to focus on supporting those American values that we all actually agree on. So not Democrat, Republican values, and those American values to me, it's family, it's community, education, I think work and work ethic, and equality of opportunity. And so that's what I'm all about, to look at those values as American. Again, not for one party or another. And look more towards those concepts that unite us as opposed to divide us. So there's a lot of focus on, culture wars that are out there, and identity politics, and things used to be a little bit calmer back when the discussion was about economics, big government, small government, things like that, the taxes, like we talked about. I would love to get back to that. But it really takes us focusing on American values that unite us, which is why I'm so big on freedom, patriotism, because I think patriotism unites us. But we also need to have people in Washington that are very much in favor of equality of opportunity too, because I think we see the wealth income disparities that exist out there. And I'll give you an example. The talking about taxes, the Trump tax cuts of 2017, 83% of those benefits went to the top 1%.
Yeah.
And we've got to fight back against that and get money back into pockets so people don't have to live paycheck to paycheck. So I think like the tax code is one way to very quickly do that, you know, and I know President Biden talked about that a little bit the other night during his State of the Union address. So those are some areas to where I think we can make an immediate impact. I was going to say I can make an immediate impact. You know how hard it is for freshman congressmen to do anything. But again, we're a vote, and then we bring projects and money back here is what I think we need to do. But overall, those values kind of guide me. Within the Marine Corps, the core values that we had was honor, courage, and commitment. And the success of my career depended upon character and integrity. It wasn't about ratings or anything else like that or money. It had nothing to do with that. It had to do with character and integrity and how you treated people and how good of a leader you were. And like ultimately, that's what made my wife and I so successful in the Marine Corps, is how we treat people and what we want to do for them and fighting for them, fighting for our Marines, fighting for their families, you know, ultimately fighting for America as well. I'll say though, like when you go to combat, and I fought in Iraq and Afghanistan, I was flying off aircraft carriers. When you're in situations like that, you are fighting. Yes, you're fighting for America, but you're really fighting for like the Marines to your left and your right.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel like we need to be here. Like we're all doing this for America, for the big win, for the big cause, for democracy, but we're here for each other to make each other's lives better, you know, ultimately. And so like I want to apply those same values here within the political world, within political service. And so again, while people might not agree with 100% of my policy stances, we definitely need to we need to have leaders of character and integrity, because we have a crisis of character right now.
I agree. I don't think you can say it any better. We have a crisis of character, and I think that's what will make a huge difference. So how can people help you, and how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so thank you for asking. My website is mikeobrienforpa.com. So you can go there. You can see a little bit more about myself, my family. You can see what Brooklyn and Jaden look like. Those are my kids and my wife. And so there's a lot and more on my values as well. So a big picture overview is on there. And so if you'd like to donate, there's a donate button there as well. If you'd like to volunteer and receive emails, there are places to fill in your information. But also, if you would like to volunteer, you can send an email direct to, it's mike@mikeobrienforpa.com, or Sean at that same address. Sean is my campaign manager, or Sarah so Mike, Sean, or Sarah at mikeobrienforpa.com.
Perfect, perfect. So we will post a link to your website and how people can help you. But before we end, I am thankful for the time you give me. I know you are busy, but it will make a huge difference for people to get to know you and hear from you, directly from you. Because like you said earlier, not a lot of candidates make themselves available for people to talk to them and get to know them. Yeah. So now you know you can reach out to Mike, ask any question that you have, help, volunteer, learn about his campaign and what he stands for. But let's just, before we end, I would love to ask you a few questions and just tell me the first thing come to your mind.
Yep.
So who inspire you? Like if you have to give one name, who's your inspiration?
My wife. And
good job. Good job.
Please tell her I said that.
Yes, good job. We're going to tag her.
No, we, like I said, we've been married for 18 years. Do I get a time to
yeah,
just say
no,
why?
Talk. Yes,
okay.
Yes.
No, we've been married for 18 years, and we've been through a lot of ups and downs, and we have the same values, yes. And we have totally different personalities, but the same values, and we complement each other so much. And I wouldn't be here without her and the support that she gives me, especially right now, when she's in command of 400 Marines and our 2 kids. So it's a tough job.
Yes. Good answer. So how or what Mike today would say to Mike, say, let's say 16 or 18 years old, Mike, what would you give
Yeah.
him advice?
You have no idea
Like
what you're
a
about to
laugh.
get into.
Tell me.
No. But continue to embody the values you were raised with. You know, it was like I'd say Pennsylvania values. I talked about American values, so family, community, but also saying what you mean and doing what you say. So that speaks to your professional reputation, and continue to embody those values about who you are as a person. You know.
Perfect, perfect. What is your guilty pleasure? One of your guilty pleasures.
Oh God.
We get answers from chocolate to movie to.
Yeah. Watching
Yeah.
trash TV like Jersey Shore, especially.
Okay. See, a lot of people will like that.
My call sign. Like everybody has call signs
Yeah.
in when you're a fighter pilot. Mine was Snooky
Okay.
from Jersey Shore. So
Shout out.
So yeah. So I actually nobody called me Mike until I retired from the military.
Oh, wow.
I'm known as Snooky to
Oh,
everybody.
wow.
So in the military. So, yeah.
Okay, perfect,
Yeah.
perfect. So, what one thing that people get wrong about you? Something that, you wish people would know about you, or
Yeah.
they always get wrong
Well,
about you?
because I was a Marine, they think we're robots, and we're not. It's like we are normal people. Like this conversation, like we can smile, and
Yeah.
like I'll tell you, like I was in addition to like in Jersey Shore, like I'm a DJ too.
Oh,
So like I
wow.
would always DJ like as a Marine officer, and like that was totally okay. Like I was not this like robotic guy that you see on commercials and billboards and
Yeah,
stuff. So,
yeah. Okay.
yeah.
DJ. So if you
Yeah.
need a DJ,
Yep.
reach out.
Yeah, it's been a while
Reach
since
out.
I've done it,
Yeah, yeah.
but I can
But-
pull it back together.
Wow, wow. And what is something that you, other than DJing and being a fun human, not a robot,
Yeah.
what one thing that you want people to know about you?
That kind of my heart in the sense of like what I'm all about, and it's helping people. And I think there's too many politicians that are they're all about themselves, and it's not. It's really not, and it's about all of us. And again, that was the story with Taj. It was about bringing us all together. It was never about him. And so like I took a lot away from how he lived his life. And I think that's incredibly important to keep in mind when you lose somebody, and everybody's lost somebody like that.
Yeah.
That's close to them, that helps them live a better life themselves, or a more focused life. And so that is my takeaway from him, and I'll stick with me forever.
Thank you very much for giving us the time, and I wish you the best in your campaign. And we
Thank
are
you.
going to follow with Mike, and we're going to share updates and let you guys know how is his campaign going. But remember that if you want to make a difference and you don't like something, you have the option to vote someone out and vote someone in and hold them accountable. Even after you vote, however or whoever you vote for, you can still hold them accountable. Make sure that they do the things that they promise to do. And remember that change starts with us, with you, me, Mike, with the person that we are going to elect. So please choose wisely and make sure you be informed. Check the website, learn about your candidates and learn what they stand for, and be the change that you want to see in the world.